Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Ferghal Armstrong, and welcome to this episode of Cracking Addiction. And once again, we have the good Mr. Stephen Hurd. Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Ferghal, and good evening.
Good evening
How
to
are
you.
you?
I'm very well. So, in the previous episode of Cracking Addiction, we spoke about how alcohol intersects with family violence from the point of view of the perpetrator of family violence. I wonder if we could address how alcohol intersects with the victim of family violence in this episode.
Mm.
What are your initial thoughts on that issue?
Things like victim blaming come up.
Hmm.
Puts herself in the wrong position.
Hmm.
She shouldn't be drinking. Um, it's a man's domain. She shouldn't be drunk, heaven forsake.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so they're the kinds of things that the overlay of what a woman, what a mother should be, really sort of jumps out as my initial bias. Um, however, the what we're really talking about is not her drinking and what she does, but it's about the experience she has in a relationship
Mm.
when she's drinking
Mm.
and what that might mean. And I think we've intimated previously too that her drinking in a family violence context, not in all contexts, or all relationships, could be as a result of coping with family violence that's been experienced or she's experiencing on an ongoing
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
And that might have just sort of crept into her behaviours over many, many years, in alliance with her partner, perhaps, socially, or developed separately in order to numb the pain, numb the isolation, numb the dehumanisation that can be caused by family violence.
And also, I suppose you need to think about the fact that alcohol and drugs can be used as a form of coercion. So, perpetrators can force their partners into alcohol and drug use. And in particular, with regards to drug use, that then can become an extension of that of control over the victim. So, if you don't do what I say, I'm not going to get you the drugs to use, or I'm not going to buy you the alcohol to use. I'm not going to give you the money to buy the drugs or the alcohol. So there are some situations whereby victims have been forcibly introduced to substance use disorder as a form of control. So there's a flip side. So on the one hand, it's about coping, but on the other hand, it's about forcibly developing a dependency and therefore being vulnerable to control.
Yeah, that's exactly right too. In more sort of later years, there's been a topic called substance use coercion
Substance use coercion,
as
exactly.
as a subset of family violence behaviours. And
Yeah.
again, if we consider family violence perpetration as a set of opportunistic sort of skills, strategies,
Yeah.
then this is another one
Yeah.
that we haven't
Indeed.
actually mentioned
Yeah.
directly.
Mm.
Certainly, when the victim we have uses substances, whether it's alcohol or cannabis or ice or
Yeah.
whatever else,
Yeah.
and the examples you portray are really, really common. There was a study done mid 2010s, 2014, 15
Hmm.
in England, I think, and they came up with four separate categories. The methodology was to ask women who rang in for a family violence service, what have you been of your experiences around substance use and
Hmm.
how that's impacted you? And in each of about four different categories, about a quarter of the women said things like, "Yeah, I've had my substance use controlled by my partner, either
Mm.
given too much or withheld."
Mm.
Exactly as you say. Or when I went to seek treatment, they sabotaged it.
Yeah, that's another issue, isn't it? That's a huge issue. Is access to treatment.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
probably more to the point, and perhaps where we might want to explore a bit more is my substance use might be used against me
Indeed.
by my partner.
I might tell, or my partner might tell social services that I'm using substances so that I have the threat of having my children removed from me.
Exactly.
Or my partner might even tell my employer about my substance use, so I might lose my job, therefore I lose my financial independence. Or my partner will, here's another one, my partner is going to intoxicate me, and I use that verb as a transitive verb. My partner is going to intoxicate me to the point where I am no longer capable of actually arranging my escape, or I'm not able to enact any escape plan. I don't have the money or the cognitive ability to actually reach out to services to actually get help and develop methodologies to either to stay safe or to generate an escape.
It's not surprising that a lot of women who come for AOD treatment,
Yeah,
probably especially in the illegal substances,
yeah,
are fearful of calling the police.
absolutely. Yeah,
And
so
that's that fear stigma might exist outside of a relationship, but it can most definitely be used against them by their partner.
Yeah. What is the view of, or how do police manage in Victoria, for instance, that issue? Do they view the users of substances in the context of a family violence scenario as victims, or as people who have broken the law?
Oh, listen, I wish I had really good information on that. I really wish I had a good understanding of what happens.
Yeah.
What I would like to think happen, and what I hear happens, is that victims aren't heard.
They are or they are not heard, sorry.
That they are heard.
They are heard, right.
However, that's not reflected in what I hear victims say.
What do victims say in your experience?
Victims say they might have been drunk. There was an argument. Their partner called police. He's treated as a victim. Her drunkenness is treated as her being hysterical, incoherent, and probably not worth talking to. And so they get his side of the story.
And that's also another very interesting issue, isn't it? The fact that perpetrators are very good at presenting themselves as victims.
And we know, and that's got a label in itself.
Tell me that label.
Well, it's called the victim stance.
The victim stance. Now, here's a question for you.
Men's behaviour change world.
Yeah.
Us men are good at presenting ourselves as victims and viewing the world very egocentrically.
Yeah.
And sensing and reporting how the world impacts me.
Yes. Which buys into my entitlement that the world owes me, and therefore when I don't get what the world owes me, I become the victim.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that becomes my narrow focus.
Yeah.
So whatever I do to counteract that, I can justify.
Yeah. Because the world owes me.
And I can, and then when we translate that to family violence, it's my partner owes me.
Yeah.
It's my partner knows those behaviours she does triggers me, pushes my buttons.
It's her fault.
And it's her fault.
She knows what buttons I need to, what I don't want to be pressed.
Yeah.
And she made me do it.
And then when substances are involved, it complicates the picture for us as outsiders more so.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we need as treating teams, clinical teams, to really look through the smoke screens and the obfuscation and the blame shifting a lot more critically. And critically, that's code for using a gendered family violence lens.
Now, you're absolutely right, but I'm going to throw a spanner in the works. Yes, I fully acknowledge that family violence is a gender issue. And I fully acknowledge that AOD is an issue in family violence, as we were discussing. But here's a question. What is the percentage of family violence that is perpetrated by a woman on a man? Do you know?
I think any numbers in an intimate partner relationship.
Yeah.
It's in the single-digit
It's in the
percentages.
single digits, but it's not zero.
No,
It's not zero, right?
well, it's not zero. It's not zero.
So
No, and it does happen.
it does happen. It's rare, but it does happen.
Mm.
So we've just had a conversation about victim stance, right? We've just had a conversation in which we've agreed that the perpetrators of family violence are very clever and very good at portraying themselves as the victim, and especially in the context of AOD, where, oh, my partner's drug affected, she's lost her marbles, she's become violent and agitated, and look at me, I'm the victim, I'm calling the police because I don't want to touch her because the police have got to control her. Therefore, she's the perpetrator and I'm the victim. Knowing that the prevalence of family violence perpetrated by women on men is not zero, how do you make the distinction between those who are genuine victims and those who are doing victim stancing?
I guess my professional judgment is then to say the person in front of me.
Yeah,
I've got one person in front of me, my client in front of me,
yeah,
and me, is to, in order to get to that point of accepting he's a victim, there is a lot of hoops to go through, a lot of barrier, a lot of checks and balances, so to speak.
yeah.
How does he talk about the partner?
Mm.
It's really navigating my way through, and I guess what drives me is the risk of me being wrong, or the impact of me being wrong. If I believe his victim stance, just allow me to get my negatives worked out here. If I believe his victim stance, the potential for me to do harm is far greater than if I don't.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally, because it's a really difficult issue. But for me, I agree with you totally in that regard. But for me, the other key thing is, where is the power in this relationship?
Oh, when you've got him talking about it, that's right. One thing, men. Now, this probably isn't zero either. But the other thing we haven't talked about in all this family violence stuff is the level of fear.
Yeah.
If you've got two people in a relationship and no one's scared of each other,
Mm-hmm.
right, well, and they're in conflict,
Yeah.
well then perhaps there's a problem, or perhaps it's not family violence, it's just violent conflict.
You could almost say that that's appropriate conflict if it's between two equals.
It's hard to know how to express that in real terms.
But let's go back to the definition of family violence, where there is a power and control. So there is an inherent power imbalance, isn't there?
Mm.
So that's what defines family violence.
Yeah, and there's fear on the other side.
Yeah.
That's the next criteria, and I think you've talked about that in a really eloquent way to say that women are fearful of their partner killing them.
Yeah. Whereas men are fearful
of being
laughed at. Yeah.
And and those two outcomes are just so different.
They are.
But they can't be equated.
Yeah.
So that level of fear, like a woman when I don't like speaking on a women's experience, because I'm not a woman. But what I hear women say, the amount of planning that they subconsciously have trained themselves to go through for when they go out, what they wear, how they know how to interact with somebody, making sure that the places are lit that they go to, being with other people, whole lot of things that me as a man who walks down the street, I'm oblivious to.
Yeah.
I've needed to train myself to be worried about my safety on a moment by moment basis when I go out.
Yeah.
Even when I'm staying at home. I'm oblivious to that, and I'll always be, as I'm a man.
So let's go back to this issue of how alcohol and drugs intersect with the victim. I mean, I think we are approaching this issue from the lens of being part of providing services to victims. I think it's really important to emphasize that, when you work in our industry, you've got to believe the victim story, and you've got to see through the labels of, the pejorative labels, like, oh, she uses alcohol, or she uses drugs, or she lost her mind because she was drug affected. All of those pejorative labels that you might hear, you've got to cut through all of that, and you've got to see to the core of the issue, where there is a victim in front of you who has got a medical condition that needs help, both on a medical level and on a psychosocial level. You can't be colored. You cannot lose your compassion.
You make me think of a recent example that you're involved in, which was an extremely compassionate, we would like to think it's an everyday compassion, but it's taken a long time to get there. And that's to do with refuges.
Yes.
And how refuges can bar women who use substances from seeking refuge.
Now that I didn't know.
Well, I found out a little bit more the other day, but
all right.
That it used to be the case that women with substance use issues used to be able to attend refuges, which is what you would think would happen, and then and they'd be catered for, managed, and provided service, and catered for, and their needs catered for. However, that changed in the last 10 years or so.
Really? In what way?
I understand. In what way? They became a risk to the refuge.
So being substance affected then became a barrier to getting refuge, to escaping.
Having the need to maintain substance use.
Right.
And being in contact with their dealer's partner, who will then deliver substances to a refuge. And the last thing a refuge wants is to have their location identified. Yeah. And it put the entire household into risk. So it was sort of a black banding.
Which is a barrier to services, both on so many levels, isn't it?
So many levels. Yeah. And that's a common thing for women seeking services, not being believed by police because they're hysterical, or overstating the mark, or your partner doesn't look like he could be a perpetrator of family violence, based on those sort of individual biased rationale.
Yeah.
But then we're all people. We are all subject to the same foibles. And we've got to remember too that because substances might be involved, that doesn't mean family violence is going to be involved either with a lot of our clients.
So really, if we're working in the AOD sector, we need to be all the more agile in the way that we deliver services to the victims of family violence, lest our lack of agility becomes a barrier to treatment, which then leads to an avoidable death. That's how I look at it.
Well, that's right. That's right, and you've gone straight to the real critical aspect of both substance use and family violence, that death is the ultimate potential outcome.
Absolutely, yeah.
I want to sort of pursue something you just said a little while ago regarding how we want to believe our clients, believe their stories. And I guess I was thinking about this earlier today. When I talk about family violence, I think I default to talking about victims. And that can assist communication. It can get in the way of communication by having that unspoken sort of default. However, what we want to do with our clients is we've been working with perpetrators of family violence for a long time as well.
Yeah.
Recognised or unrecognised. They've slipped through because nothing's been disclosed, or it's not part of my remit as a worker to identify it. Because what we want to do is also treat our clients with unconditional positive regard. And when it comes to female victims of family violence, yes, we believe them, and believing them is really, really important. When it comes to a male who presents, and as we've talked about, with the victim stance, how does that then impact me when I try and believe him, knowing the evidence is that probably not telling us the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I approach this from the view that I am not there to collude with him. I'm there to help him with his AOD issues, and I'm there to refer him to an expert, dare I say, like your good self. I'm not there to tackle the issues of, laying blame on men who use family violence and who need AOD help. I'm committed to their care in terms of the AOD, but I'm fortunate that I work in an organization where, there is that expertise at a different level to help me.
And the skills we develop in identifying that and motivating that particular client to actually seek help
Yeah.
Are invaluable.
Yeah.
Knowing that men in general don't ask for help that easily.
No,
I don't identify the problem that easily. So how we can assist them to do that is a fantastic skill set.
And on that sweet note, we're going to have to end it, Steve. Thank you so much for your time. That's all for today, folks. My name is Dr. Ferghal Armstrong, and this has been Cracking Addiction.